Welcome back to Boss and Cage podcast. So this episode is going to be a fun episode. This individual that you're about to be introduced to, it's funny that his branding is phenomenal and it always tells you about who he is. You know, he's a guy that knows your aunt, that knows your uncle, that knows Johnny, that knows about marketing, that knows strategy, that knows all the people that you need to know at the right time in the right place. So for all intensive purposes on this episode, we're going to deem him the network boss. So without further ado, Mike, why don't you give our audience a little bit more insight of who you are and what are we going to talk about today?
Very good. Well, thank you. It's so great to be on here. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am indeed the guy who knows a guy. And I like to joke that I'm such a good networker because I'm not that good at anything else. So you got to be good at one thing. But that's the key to business. Be really good at one thing. And as long as that one thing is something that someone will pay for, you got a business. So it all started back in 2014. I moved to Groton, Connecticut, and I didn't know anybody at all. I knew myself, my wife, no one else. And for what I wanted to do, I needed to have some connections. So I started going to every networking event I could find, every ribbon cutting, anything where people were, started meeting people. And I didn't really know how to do it. I read a couple books, but I wasn't a networking expert by any means. But I found within a couple months, I was connecting movers and shakers to other movers and shakers. And I'm like, how do you guys not know each other? You live 5 miles apart. You've been in the same place for 50 years. Mm-hmm. But people don't tend to network. You know, when you know a few people, you don't feel the urgency. You're like, oh, I know people. I'm connected. When you know nobody, that's when you have the urgency. So I was meeting everybody and then I was connecting them. So flash forward to 2020. Then I managed to upload myself to the internet, as we all did at that time. Because Southeast Connecticut, where I live, Southeast Connecticut is not the commercial capital of Southeast Connecticut, let alone of any other part of the world. So the great opportunities aren't here local. So I was really well connected in an area where the opportunities weren't. But once I went online and started going to virtual networking events and virtual summits and virtual conferences and meeting people in Canada and Australia and England and Africa and Atlanta and, you know, all over the world, I was able to meet the kind of people I really needed to meet and then connect them, because that's kind of what I do. And I eventually was able to build that into a business because I realized, and some people shared with me the idea, that people will pay for introductions. Mm-hmm. You know, they need those connections, especially if they're doing joint ventures, if they're working with other people, which most entrepreneurs are finding other people to solve their problems instead of doing it themselves, because that's how you get ahead. But you need to find those people, and that takes time. So I save my clients the time because I'm going to be networking 20, 30 hours a week, no matter what, whether they're paid for it or not. So I might as well leverage that by carrying my clients with me in my head. And every time I meet with someone, I'm thinking, which of my clients this person need to meet with, and then making that introduction for them. So it's as if they're going to the event, as if they're doing all the networking, but they're not spending all the time to do it. And I like to joke I'm a professional frog kisser. I kiss all the frogs, introduce my clients to the princes.